In today's video, we will work with 2D arrays and methods. This is exactly similar to what we did in arrays. So just like 1D arrays or simple arrays, 2D arrays are also passed by reference. So 2D arrays are passed by reference. You don't have to return them since, for example, if I pass this array to the method, right? If I pass x to the method, any method or any function, and the value of x will be changed here as well, and it will also be changed into the method. So suppose I have one row which has 1 2 3 4, and I have a method here, and I pass this x to their method, and I change those values to like 10 11 12 13. So after, and I don't return the value into that method. So after I print it here, after I print it after the method call, I will see the value of check x is changed into the main method as well. That is the calling method. So arrays are passed by reference. Their values are modified in both the calling, the function in which it is passed, and the function that calls. So we don't have to return it. So let's illustrate this concept through a simple example. I'm gonna comment this portion for now. So now let's create a simple method. So void, I'm gonna call it public. I'm gonna call it test since we are literally testing, and I'm gonna pass a multi-dimensional array. So to pass multi-dimensional array, you have to simply do the same thing. You have to write int. You have to use two square brackets now. Then you can give it any name like uh, array. So you can call it that, or you can call it. No, I think this one is fine. Or you can even call it x. Uh, we can call it as well, and let's call it x for simplicity. But you need to see the idea, so it's fine. So now in this method, and I'm gonna modify the value of 0 to 77. Right, I'm doing this. So first let's print the value of 0 0. So whatever will be stored at 0 0 will get printed here, right? So after this, let's call this method. Uh, let's call it here. So I'm gonna call it test. I'm gonna pass x into it. So to pass an array like any variable, you don't have to write the data type. You just have to write its name. And let's run our program. So it's asking for rows. Let's create 4 1. So as you can see, initially our value was 0, but after passing to the method, this value changed here. So it doesn't work for normal variables. For example, if x was a variable, the value of x will still be the same, which like it was here. But in case of arrays or 2D arrays, the values are modified in the caller and the passer in both functions, right? Since arrays are passed by reference. So this was the idea. And let's now go ahead. Let's create a function which simply prints an array. So we already have the logic for printing, and let's run it. First, let's build our function. Let's call it public static void print array, and I'm gonna pass it variable and a 2D array. Sorry, I'm gonna call it x. You can give it any name here, and now what we have to do is we have to copy this logic. I have already made this logic here. So now I can remove this piece of code since I have already created a function, and let's run it. So it's asking for row. Let's enter 2 rows and 3 columns. So it's asking for 4, 22, 66. Oh wait, I haven't called the function, so let's call the function after the input. Oh, oops, I simply have to pass x here. So now it will work fine. So let's run and let's give it 3 rows, 2 columns, 44, 11, 88, 66, 77, and 11 again. So as you can see, we got our all elements printed here through this function. So this function basically prints the arrays, and we are passing the array to this function. Similarly, let's create a function called input. So we can do that. So let's create a function called input. So I'm gonna have to do the public static void inputting. I'm gonna call it inputting. I'm gonna pass it an array. You may not need to pass it, but it's just a personal preference. But I will also pass it length, the number of rows, and number of columns, or we may not need those. You can either pass the number of rows and number of columns from the main function, that is from here, or you can find them here. You can create new variables here like int or I can use the or variable, or actually you might not need those. Yeah, we don't need those, but what I want to tell you, you can access them through this function, that is the length function. So I have to create scanner objects here, since each function has its own objects and variables. And let's call the inputting function here. Let's pass it x. So now in our main function, we are just simply creating an array, and then we are using these functions to input and print. So let's enter 2 rows and 3 columns, like enter 44, 77, 55, 88, 99, 0. So as you can see, we got all our elements inputted and printed successfully into our array through these functions. So notice one thing, after inputting I am not returning. So initially my array was empty. My X array was empty. That is, it had zeros only. And after passing it this function, the value of X is modified into the main method as well. But if you want to return this array, you can return it as well. So to return an array, simply replace this with int double brackets. Oops. So now our program knows that our method will return a multi-dimensional array. So after in the end of your function, or you can simply say return x, since x is our returning. So and we can simply store x back into x. So now let's run it. Let's see what difference it has made. So as you can see, we got our elements now. So that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching.